Everyone, welcome to the live. I'm not sure what's been going on for the past two connections. I'm not sure. I'm trying to reconnect. Hope you guys can see me. But basically, I'm doing like an impromptu live. I just had some free time to spare, and I thought why not hop on live and interact with you guys. And yeah, so if you guys have any questions or whatsoever, feel free to take it away. And like I'll just answer some questions and interact with you guys. And yeah. So if you guys have any questions of any kind, just take it away. The reason why I'm doing it at this time zone right now is because, previously I think one of the feedbacks was like, you guys wanted me to do it in the evening side of things, especially for folks from India. So I was like, okay, so why not just do one? Yeah, hi. So just do a live on the in the evening session so that like folks from India can join. Okay, so I think we have questions. So you guys can privately ask me questions as well, just in case if you guys are a little shy, if you don't want it to appear on the public side of things. Do I have subliminal audios? No, but I am going to be releasing a few affirmation tapes really, really soon. So it's in the works right now. There's going to be affirmation tapes based on, the SP, self concept, and so on. So I am definitely going to be doing affirmation tapes for that. Okay, so let me answer a few questions right now, and yeah. Okay, just 1 minute. I'm trying to see if there's any questions. I'm trying to scroll up because there was a question that I feel like I missed. I would love to know more about manifesting on a timeline. So, when it comes to manifesting on a timeline, I guess you're talking about manifesting on a time crunch. Essentially, you have a deadline and you would like to manifest things by that time. And what you do is you simply assume that it is done by then. So, the idea is that once you set the time, right, you essentially assume that it is done, and regardless of whatever you see in the 3D, you don't let that phase you. It's simple as that. Like, in concept, it's pretty simple, it's very straightforward. You simply assume that it is done by a certain date and you persist in that. But the thing is, the challenge that many people face, especially if you're new to this, of course, is um, thinking about the how is it all going to pan out. And so this is a process that really requires a lot of faith. It really requires a lot of trust in the higher self. And so I would definitely suggest that you guys really, if you are going in this approach, like to have a lot of faith in the process and really trust yourself in your ability to create, and you should be fine. So if you are taking this route, one thing that I would definitely suggest is don't discuss it with a lot of people unless they are really into manifesting. And don't entertain any contradictory information, don't check the 3D, and simply persist and you should be fine. Okay, I think we have a few video requests to join, so I'll just do this then. I'll just answer the few questions we have, and then I will try to accommodate anyone who requests. Okay. If you have a dream regarding your manifestation, what it means, it could mean a lot of things. One, the primary thing it means for me is that it's been in on your mind for a while right now, and your dream is just a reflection of that. Dreams can be a bit tricky because the meanings are up for interpretation, like many other things in the world. In fact, I just made a tweet about that as well. But really, dreams can sometimes be about your psychological state, or literally sometimes your dreams can be about what you watched the night before. So I wouldn't take dreams too seriously, but if you are going to give it a meaning, I would highly suggest that you give it a favorable meaning before proceeding. um, Okay, so let me. I'm not sure. So for the follow-up questions, just give me a minute because there's just too many questions right now. I think it's like coming in. I'm trying to keep track of all of it, and at the same time trying to wave to people as well. So just with the follow-up questions, just give me a sec. So there's a question about how to ignore 3D in aspects of health. So this is a really interesting one that I've been exploring recently as well, because this has been coming on my radar for a while now. So with regards to health, the way you ignore 3D is you essentially tell yourself that you are improving every single day, that the change is happening on a cellular level. And with health, the main thing is to really surrender to the process, basically essentially believing that your body is capable of healing itself, and all you have to do is aid the healing process with your mind, basically. So with gratitude, with good thoughts, basically thoughts that generates health, rather than thinking about the disease or anything that brings you down. You don't entertain that, right? You try to come from a place of love as much as possible, and that's what you essentially feed your mind. But when it comes to the 3D, if there's anything that's like really bugging you, what I would do is that do whatever you have to do in the 3D, like medication wise or whatsoever. But in your mind, at the end of the day, like what Neville would say, like definitely revising the events as though let's say you have rashes, for example, right? And you are seeing your arm and you see your rashes and you feel bad about it. At the end of the day, what I might do is definitely see my hand having like clear smooth skin, and I would just like really persist in that. And also another thing that you ought to do is to kind of like remove your attention by focusing on something else, maybe the task at hand with your work or your hobby or your career, right? Because that is what a healthy person would do anyway. So by doing that, by focusing on whatever is at hand, you're essentially saying, okay, this is not an issue for me right now, because this is what a healthy person would be doing. He would be focusing, or he or she would be focusing on whatever is at hand right now. So maybe that could help you. I hope that answers your question. How to deal with SP not conformed yet? Thanks. Okay, so with SP not conforming, again, there are two different versions essentially, right? So one is the current unconformed version that you are seeing in the 3D right now, and the other is the ideal version in your mind. So essentially it becomes a game of which version you feed. So you want to be feeding the ideal version in your mind as much as possible. So this means entertaining that ideal version by having conversations, by affirming and having gratitude for that version rather than the version that you see, and essentially not being on the lookout for the 3D version in any way. So this means not looking out for the text messages, not looking out for anything that this person may do, right? So essentially you put the focus on yourself and the ideal version in your mind, and you can do visualizations as well. You can use that to your aid as well, and really like just persist in that version more so than the unconformed 3D version, because that is not the version we want to feed. Because whatever you focus on grows more, right? Whatever you focus on is being sustained in your 3D. So the only way to bring in the ideal version is to focus on the ideal version, so that that version hardens into fact. Or in other words, you can see it as you shifting into a reality where that ideal version already exists. So those are two different ways to see it, but essentially you put your focus on the ideal version so that the ideal version comes into your reality, and this unconformed version will eventually go away. So the way you deal with the unconformed version is by not dealing with that person at all, is by ignoring that person, is by overlooking that person and focusing on the ideal version in your mind. So but the thing is, you have two contradictory feelings. One is inner pressure, you want to reach that goal. The second is being relaxed in the knowing, right? So okay, so this is with regards to the time crunch question for those of you who are watching the replay. So essentially what this person is saying is the inner pressure, because you want to reach that goal, right? And the second is being relaxed in the knowing. So one, when you talk about the inner pressure, that's self-inflicted inner pressure, right? No one is making you feel that pressure. It's something that you are giving yourself right there. If you feel like a ticking time bomb because of a certain time date, it's because you are making it feel so. Like, if my Amazon package is coming, let's say on the 20th or the 25th, I'm not going to be, feeling like, a ticking time bomb, because it's a package, it's just going to come. Like, what am I supposed to do? Right? I have normalized that feeling. It's just a package. Right? So the pressure could be because you think that without it, something may not, happen, or, you're putting it on a pedestal essentially. Right? So you're putting pressure on yourself because you have, held it in a high regard essentially. So you have to really normalize it in your reality that, okay, with or without this, I'm going to be fine, type of way. So that kind of detachment will really help you here. And the when you are detached, and whatnot, that's when you come to the second point where you say, like, the second one is being relaxed in the knowing. So those aren't two contradictory things. What I would do is that, remove the inner pressure, completely, because that's, self-inflicted. And if I were you, one thing that I'll definitely prioritize is, your internal peace and happiness. And one way you do so is by recognizing, hey, you know what, this is something that I am putting on myself at the moment. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the case unless I say so. And by recognizing that, like, you remove your pressure completely. You have to ask yourself, where is this pressure coming from? Is it coming from, like, the need to, this thing to happen right now? Or is it like societal pressure? Or, why does it have to happen right now? Because asking those types of questions can really shed some light on why it matters to you a lot, and then you can deal with that as well. And also another thing I would do is definitely, like, start envisioning yourself already, having that, or, start embodying that version of you who already has that desire fulfilled. That way, you wouldn't feel that pressure, because if you already have something that you want, you wouldn't feel the pressure. It doesn't make sense. So I would say definitely immerse yourself in your imagination to the point where you don't feel that pressure as well. So yeah, I hope that helps. uh, I want to get in a desired college, but I'm not able to crack the entrance from past 3 years. What should I be doing to get that this time? Okay, so essentially, you want to get into a college. For the past 3 years, not much has been going on. So you have to ask yourself, like, where has your thoughts been thus far? Like, I would say, even before you do anything, like, do a self-diagnosis. Like, okay, where are my thoughts at for the past 3 years? What is my first kind of, like, thoughts that comes to my mind whenever I think about going into this college? Right? Like, do I think, like, okay, the entrance exam is hard to crack, or do I feel like only a percentage of folks get into it, or do I feel like, only the best of the best get into it? And if so, do I feel like the best of the best, and so on? Like, just penning your thoughts down here would kind of give you a clear thought as to, okay, this is where I'm at right now, and this is where I have to be. And I can see, like, okay, this is the kind of leap in logic that I have to make essentially to be there. Essentially, it's a very simple issue where you already see yourself studying that, right? That's what you ought to be doing, ideally speaking. But of course, in the middle, if you are thinking like, well, I have to pass the entrance exam in order to get into it, then that's a limiting belief that you're putting on yourself. So what I would do is to bypass the entrance exam completely and see yourself studying in that college, already being a student, because that implies that you already got in, through whatever means necessary. You may have gone through it with, the entrance exam, but you can also go through it, through other means as well. How, I may not know, but the higher self knows ways and means which you know not of. So my point is that, just envision the end desire where you're already studying there, bypassing this whole entrance exam obstacle that you are putting in your mind right now. And what it will do for you is that it will allow you to, be open to other ways that, that could enable you to go in there. So yeah, I hope that helps. How to have faith if I'm manifesting from past 2 years and seeing no movement in 3D? Okay, so if you are manifesting for the past 2 years, I always say this, but you may have started your journey 2 years ago, but I can guarantee you right now that this isn't a journey that's going to take 2 years if you stay on course for 2 years. right? Like if you tell me like you have been persisting, not checking the 3D and things like that for the past 2 years and it didn't happen, it's probably not the case, right? Because it can really happen in a relatively short period of time if you don't have any contradictory thoughts, if you're entertaining favorable thoughts as much as possible, if your self-concept is relatively good, and if you're not thinking like unfavorably or as reasons as to why you may not get your desires, right? And from what you say and seeing no movement in the 3D, like that just shows like probably you're looking out in the 3D as to whether or not it's coming, and part of you may feel already like, hey, like I've been doing XYZ, well, where is it right now? So that in and of itself could be self-sabotaging. So what I would do is to always, like I always tell this to my clients as well, like put the emphasis on your inner world as much as possible rather than what you see in the 3D, because the 3D may show you a plethora of things that are not in alignment to where you want to be, but if you keep putting the focus in your inner world, that has to show up eventually. Okay, I'm just waving to a few folks here. How to improve self-concept. So I've spoken about this a couple of times, but essentially you take a look at where you are right now and you take a look at your ideal version. If you don't have an ideal version, you define your ideal version, what that person looks like, and essentially you start associating yourself with that version and start embodying those thought processes. You don't have to act in a certain way or whatsoever like in the beginning. It's more about embodying the thought process and like identifying with that version more. And definitely watch your inner dialogues, like how you talk to yourself and things like that, because when folks really start out improving their self-concept, like that is super unfavorable. And so like being aware of your inner dialogues with yourself and how you perceive yourself, or even like how like what are the thoughts that comes to your mind when you see something happening on the outside, or if you find yourself like judging someone, ask yourself, why are you doing that? And like that can shed some light on where your self-concept is right now. And you can see like, okay, this is where I'm at right now, and where would I like to be? If I was already the person who I want to be, would I be thinking this way? And that allows you to kind of make that necessary shifts, if you will. So that's a good start, I would say. Okay, let me just okay, there are a lot of private questions as well, so I'll just take a time to answer those. um Okay, so how to help with anxiety and panic attacks with the law of attraction? Thanks. So this is something that I'm very familiar with. I'm not a stranger to this at all, actually, because I've gone through this myself. The way we do it is essentially, to start seeing yourself as a person who's essentially confident, right? Like, so you associate yourself with that. And what I stopped doing was to stop putting labels on things. So if something is happening, like panic attacks or whatsoever, I don't see it as something that's like something that's very prolonged, or I'll just say like, oh, I'm just out of breath for a short while. Or if I'm really really anxious about something, I reframe it as excitement rather than anxiety. So if I like really really feel anxious before something happens, I really say, okay, I'm really excited for what's about to come right now, because like your mind can't differentiate between things like nervousness and excitement, for example. So you can always reframe it as such, and stop associating yourself with those feelings, right? And also setting the intention like way ahead of time, like that, okay, things has to go favorable for me, and trying to like basically writing down the best case scenarios and just reading that, rather than like letting your mind slip into like the worst case scenarios of it all. That really helps. And also, like, what I would do from a practical standpoint is planning ahead of time. If like an event is about to come and whatnot, one thing that really helped me to elevate the anxiety and whatnot was to plan ahead of time. So if I'm going to a new place or something, I ensure that I have everything in check and whatnot, and I will make a checklist. So that way, like when I am going somewhere, like I have everything well prepared way ahead of time. So that way it significantly reduces my anxiety and whatnot. And also like I was watching like many shorts on this as well. It's like, go into it, things with like a winner's mentality. Like, don't underestimate yourself. Like, you're not lesser than anyone in the room, like wherever you may be, right? The very fact that you are here right now breathing means you are worthy of, receiving all that you desire. So, go into, whichever room, like, with confidence that, okay, hey, like, I am worthy of receiving all that I desire. Don't view yourself as, okay, I may not know anything and things like that. Rather see yourself as someone who is able to, absorb things very quickly, and that, everyone has to start somewhere. And I think justifying things that way really helps for you. So yeah, that's how I would deal with it. Can I manifest eye color change? If all things are possible, certainly you can. Like, whatever eye color it may be, like, just start, like, intending that you already have that eye color change, and start writing things down. And yeah, folks have done it before, like, lightening their eye colors and whatnot. So I would say it's definitely possible. How to deal with resistance? Can you be more specific about that, because it's a little vague? So there's a number of ways I could answer it, but I just want to ensure that I'm answering it specifically for you. Best way to live in the end. I would say it varies from person to person. Like, the way I choose to live in the end may be different from you, because again, techniques like what works for me may not necessarily work for you. And I always say this because, like, as much as we are all one and whatnot, like, personality wise we may be very unique, and the way we absorb and grasp information may be very different. So the best way for me to live in the end would be, like, let's say, using techniques, for example, like visualizing or affirming, for example, or just, like, just sitting down with my thoughts and just seeing the end in my mind, or having inner conversations and so on, right? That's the way I live in the end the best. But for you, it may be something else. Maybe it could be just, like, completely detaching from the desire and just going and living your life. That may be the best way for you to live in the end. So it's really something that you have to figure it out on your own. But techniques are a good way to go about it. Like I said, detachment is a good way to go about it. Like, basically enjoying your life and not getting hung up on things, living in the present moment. That's a good way of living in the end, because essentially what that means is that it shows that you're trusting the process. So because of that, like, I would say, like, living, in the present moment, focusing on the day-to-day aspects, but, with the intention that everything is going well, that's a good way to live in the end. So while manifestation, do we also need to take some efforts? I'm confused when I should take some efforts for my manifestation to come true. Okay, so this is a great question, because essentially Neville always says that free will ends in your mind. So what that means is that regardless of whether or not you do something, assuming that you are, seeing your desire as already done, regardless of what you do or you don't do, you have to get your desire. So for example, if my desire is to become a millionaire, regardless of what I do or I don't do, assuming that my thoughts is on point, right? Like, let's say, like, deep down I know it, that for a fact that I'm a millionaire. Like, even though no matter where I'm at right now, I see myself as a millionaire, right? Regardless of what I do or I don't do, that $1,000,000 or a couple $1,000,000 will come to me regardless of my actions, right? The bridge of incidents will unfold in such a way that I get that money, thus making me a millionaire, right? So you would see, like, folks winning lotteries, for example. They didn't do anything out of the blue, right? All they went is probably went to a gas station, they got a lottery ticket, or they got a scratch off, and boom, they have it right now. So that's how it works, right? That's not to say that's how every scenario works, but my point is that you don't have to do anything for you to get your desires in the 3D. All the work that you have to do, however, is in your mind, right? Maintaining consistently, the idea that your desires are already done, and, maintaining the idea that, you are already the person who has it all, rather than seeing yourself as someone who's trying to manifest something, rather than seeing yourself as someone who's trying to get XYZ, see yourself as already the person who has all that they want. So that's the only thing you have to do. So you have to, like, eventually you will take actions, right? But the beauty of it is that you won't know that those are the actions that would eventually lead you to the fulfillment of your desires. So, because, like, let's say, if you want $1,000,000, again, like, you going to the gas station may not be the most intuitive action for you to get there, but because, that's what the bridge of incidents, like, demands, like, you will automatically do it. So you won't know until you look back and, realize, like, hey, I had to do XYZ in order for me to get there. Like what Steve Jobs says, like, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. So to answer your question, no, you don't really have to do anything. You just go with the flow of your life, and the bridge will unfold. You know. Okay. Oh Lord. Okay, there's a lot of questions right now. What mindset should I have to increase my height to 5'6"? So what I would say is that just see yourself as the person. See yourself as someone. Identify as 5'6" from now. Identify as that person. Like in your mind, like whenever you're filling out a form, if they ask for your height, identify yourself as like 5'6", right? Simple as that. Like, so in your mind, like keep telling yourself, like, okay, like ask yourself that question. Okay, what's your height? And you reply 5'6", and randomly do this to yourself, right? Like you can set reminders where, like, I know there are like a lot of apps which can do this. Like you can ask like questions, and then in your mind you can reply like, okay, what's your height? 5'6". Like you can do this for SP as well. Like, who is SP? You can say like, he's my boyfriend or she's my girlfriend, and things like that, right? So by asking yourself the questions and then giving that questions like favorable replies, that will really help you here. So that way you are cementing the idea that you're already this person who has that. So that's one way I would do this. How to manage whole day in manifestation, explain by an example of a day. Okay, so what I would do on a day-to-day basis would not vary that much. Like again, that's what I said with the whole thing that the other person asked as well. Like, do we need to take some efforts? Like on a day-to-day basis, your day can look like however you want it to, really. But like if you want, like, what does a routine look like? Well, first thing when you wake up, like essentially like that first few minutes is essentially very crucial, right? Like this is no secret. Like everyone literally talks about it. The other day I shared a Tony Robbins video where he talks about like how he spends 10 minutes a day with gratitude and whatnot, right? So you can do something like that where you're starting the day with the right intentions, or even the night before where you're setting the intentions for the upcoming day, having gratitude for whatever you want, and essentially ensuring that when you're going to sleep with good thoughts. So that's what I would do the day prior. So when you wake up, again, set the intentions for the day. If you have a vision board, you can stare at it for a couple of minutes before you start the day. And when you're brushing your teeth and whatnot, again, have good thoughts as much as possible. Watch your thoughts. And as you're going through the day, your morning commutes and whatnot, again, watch your thoughts. That's the main thing I would do, is watch your thoughts. If they aren't favorable, shift it to something favorable. You can repeat your affirmations. You can loop it using an app like the Parrot app that many of you use, and just listen to it. And and whenever you're doing something like a task or something like work based, for example, just simply focus on that. Focus on the present moment. Focus on the task at hand, and just continue with your day. And then when you're done, if something did unfavorable happen, like revise it, write 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for that day. And then when you're going to bed, again, like detox from your phone and your laptop for like maybe 5 to 10 minutes before you go to bed. And then as you're falling asleep, just visualizing whatever you want. Like that would be something that I would do. Because for me personally, like I would just like stare at my vision board or something like that right before I go to bed, because like whatever you do right before you sleep is very essential. So that's definitely something that I take time for. Like what I might do is that like right before I go to bed, like the last few minutes, right, I would just like put my phone in airplane mode so that I'm not disturbed by anyone. So that way, like I'm really ensuring that when I have that time, I have it for myself. So in other words, like giving yourself me time as much as possible. And if you really want, like this is a very healthy thing to do, is obviously like meditating for like a couple minutes throughout the day. I mean, preferably, I guess like morning or nights would be the ideal time, especially if you are working like 9 to 5. So incorporating that in your routine, or even in the weekends if you have more time, like that would be great. SP resistance. Could you elaborate more? Like, what about SP's resistance? Again, it's such a vague topic, so like I really want to ensure that I'm answering it correctly. Like, because like just tell me like what is the exact situation so that I can answer it. The first thought that came to my mind is that I didn't work hard enough or put my 100%. So this is for the college question. So what I would do again is, it's not about your effort. Again, the fact that you are correlating that, right now in your mind it may be like the entrance, I have to pass that entrance to get into it and things like that. Or you can always say that you can bypass it firstly. But if you feel like I'm not putting in enough effort, therefore I'm not getting into it, that's a story that you're telling yourself. So you have to change the story, that you are someone who always gives your 100% in whatever that you do. And you have to like change your self perception there essentially. And you also have to see yourself as being more than qualified to be in this college. So that's something that I would do if I were you here. Okay, I'm sorry if I'm not answering your question yet, because like I'm scrolling down just a bit by bit. So thank you for your patience, guys. I really appreciate it. I have an exact look-alike person in my office, like my SP, birds before landing. This is one of those things that, like, like I really wouldn't give too much thought to it. Like, so what if it's birds before landing, right? It may or may not be. I am always someone who thinks that signs are literally something that like it's really up for interpretation. Like if you think like 11:11 is a sign, it's a sign, right? But if you think it's not, right? Like I made my recent tweet as well. It's like the truth really depends on the one who's perceiving it. So in this case as well, if you think it's birds before landing, great, it's birds before landing. But if you think it's not, it's not. So I would say that in this case, like, so what? Like, why would it matter if there's a lookalike, right? Because your focus is on the SP. So what are you doing focusing on a lookalike? Unless you want to manifest this lookalike, of course. So you have to ask yourself, like, question yourself that way. And really, like, this is what I always tell people is like, focus on your goal. Like, be so razor sharp focused on your goal that the external world or the, other things that, are irrelevant doesn't bother you at all. So that's what I would do if I were you here. SP saying that he is not the right person for me. How to change that? The idea is to look past that. The idea is to, again, like, right now the 3D is saying something, so you don't take no for an answer. You don't acknowledge that answer. You look beyond the answer by focusing on the end goal, right? Where you guys are, in a happy, loving relationship, and you persist in that until that hardens into fact. Like, simple as that. The fact that you think that you have to change this in order for that to happen is a story that you are telling yourself, and it's very important to recognize that. So you have to like collapse everything, right? Like by making it easier, by going straight to the end. And that's how you essentially manifest what you want. Because the more you get hung up on changing this middle, the more you're going to be stuck here forever, right? So if I were you, what I would do is that, like, disregard his opinions completely and focus on the ideal version of him in your mind, where he says like, I really want to be with you, or we look such no, we are like such a perfect couple, for example. Like him telling you something along those lines and really persisting in that until that comes true. And this version of him will eventually kind of fizzle out. When you react to 3D, does it slow down the process? Yes, it does. Like, I don't mean to like instill any fear, but I feel like it does, because when you are repeating the old story, because here's the deal, right? Like when you are focusing on something like your desire, and then you react to the 3D, right? Like what does Neville say, right? Like he talks about rapidly changing states do not manifest, right? Especially if this state of yours is, has a lot of resistance in the form of limiting beliefs, for example. Those states do not manifest that easily. So if I were you, what I would do is that, yes, cut down on, reacting to the 3D as much as possible. And a majority of that really comes to reacting to the 3D by checking social media, for example. So for a lot of you out there, the main trigger is probably social media. So I would definitely encourage you guys to cut it down. So this could be muting your SPs via no contact with them and whatsoever. Or even if you are in contact with them, like stop checking their stories, for example. Because like I can assure you, like 80% of the triggers when it comes to these types of things comes from social media, and most of it comes from like looking at their stories or posts, right? And certainly don't look at their follower lists and come up with the story in your mind as well, because I know a few of you do that as well. Okay. How can I ignore my 3D? So the way you ignore your 3D is by telling yourself that it's irrelevant, right? If I already know my end, right? Would the 3D, like, would the middle matter as much? So the best story to explain that would be the race between the turtle and the rabbit, right? We know that the turtle wins in the end, right? But when we look at the middle, we might think like, hey, what if the rabbit wins and what if the turtle loses and things like that. But knowing what we know, that the oh my god, the turtle is indeed going to win, right? Like, I wouldn't let the middle bother me so much, if that makes sense, right? Like, I wouldn't let the idea of the turtle losing means so much to me, if that makes sense. So that's what most people do, is that they look at the middle and they think that, okay, like, this is happening right now, what's going to happen, like my SP said no, or they said no to me right now, or this company rejected me, and so on and so forth. They're looking at the middle right now and they're thinking like, this happened, what am I going to do? But that's the middle, but you already saw the end in your mind. So ideally speaking, what do you do then? You persist in the end desire as much as possible until that happens. So if I were you, I would devote all of my attention towards the end in my mind. So in other words, putting an emphasis on the inner world, and that would allow you to manifest all that you desire with ease. So if I were you, again, focus on the end, because the middle is irrelevant, for the end is already determined by you. So I would say, like, focus on the end as much as possible, and that's the only way to ignore 3D. And don't take anything else into consideration. The more factors you consider, or I should say the more 3D factors you consider, right, the more uncertain you're going to become of the end. And you're going to do yourself a huge disservice if you do that right now. So the idea is to really simplify it for yourself as much as possible. Think of it like a child. How would a child dream, right? If you tell a child like, hey, you're going to become a pilot, is the child seriously going to think like, oh, I have to pass the civil aviation test and things like that? No, right? The child immediately goes to the end, seeing themselves like in like the pilot uniform, and like hitting the cockpit and things like that. That's how you're supposed to dream, by going straight to the end. And in the process, like, you're not supposed to think about the middle, because it is irrelevant. So continue to drill that in your mind, and that's how I would ignore the 3D if I were you. Okay. So some of my friends are here, so thanks for joining, guys. How often we have to affirm in a day? That's a good question. I would say, like, definitely, if I were you, like, I would say, like, as much as possible in the beginning, but as time goes by, you can reduce it, because the thoughts are already ingrained in your mind. But in the beginning, I would say as much as possible. Like, I always tell my clients, like, whatever pockets of time you may have, like, use that to your advantage. Affirm, because in the beginning you're trying to like, rephrase a lot of your unfavorable thoughts, right? Because the ego mind is really at its peak when it's like in the beginning, when you're trying to change a old story with the new beliefs and whatnot. The ego mind is at its peak, in the sense that it really pushes the old story to a point where, like, you might even be scared, like when you're starting your routines. Like, many clients will come and tell me like, oh, hey, once I start doing my routines, like, I feel more fear, I feel more anxiety. And I would always tell them, well, that's just the ego mind kind of like just pushing back right now. So in the beginning, like, I would say as much as you can, affirm as much as you can. There's no limit to it. But as you go by, like, you can reduce it, and because the thoughts become very natural for you. But if you really want a routine, like, I would say, like, morning, first thing when you wake up, during meal times, any pockets of time in between, like, when you're going for your commutes, shower time, for example, or like, whatever, like, mundane activity that you're doing, like doing your dishes, for example, or if you're just cleaning your room, for example. Those are times when you don't really require a lot of, like, thinking to, so what I would do is definitely use that time to affirm then. So yeah, that's what I would do. Thanks for joining, guys. Okay, so I'm seeing a few questions right now, like the 3D. So I've already answered that. So if you guys really need further clarification, just let me know. I got some difficulty to revise and let go of the old version. Anyway, any advice about it? Thank you. So, what's exactly the difficulty in revising? If you could just elaborate on that. Acting to 3D does affect our process. Yes, it does. I will have a replay of this on YouTube. So if you guys need it, you can check it later as well. SP told me that he's not capable for me and he has some criteria for his girlfriend. Should act like that criteria? No, absolutely not. If your SP is saying like, okay, I need my girlfriend to be XYZ, that is not something for you to aim for, right? Like that does not, like, again, you are putting him as the primary character in your reality, where in truth, you are the primary character in your reality. You are the star of your own reality, as we say in the community often, right? So don't put yourself in a spot where you are, acting according to what SP wants. The idea is to, let SP change himself for you, whatever that may look like. So that's why I'm saying, like, don't focus on the 3D too much. Don't focus on what the SP is saying in the 3D. Rather focus on the ideal version of him in your mind. Does the ideal version of him, say this to you? Probably not, right? He's just going on and on about how lucky he is to have you, how much he loves you, and so on, right? So I would say definitely focus on that version more rather than the current version. So that would really help you, I would say. So don't, you don't have to react, based on the criteria that he has and stuff like that, because chances are when you do that, you're not probably being true to yourself. You might feel, almost fake, if you will. So I wouldn't advise doing that. What I would definitely do is just conforming him, to being the ideal version. And you do that by holding on to the ideal version of him in your mind. So you see him as the perfectly conformed, boyfriend for you, for example, and you hold on to that version until that version is what comes. Because people are always changing their minds. People are always changing their decisions and whatnot. So you don't have to take it like, okay, this guy's opinion right now is set in stone. There's no such thing. So you don't have to worry about it. Do you think what a fortune teller tells us is what we have manifested, something we have attracted to hear? Absolutely. Because, with tarot readings or even with astrologers and whatnot, like I always say, this is like they're just reflecting our current energy at the moment, or, like our past those assumptions and beliefs. So, like if it is good, then that means, like the way I see it, it's like a progress report. Like, hey, okay, I have been thinking well, right? But if it is not what we like to hear, right, that doesn't mean it's the end all be all. What I would see it as is, okay, this is where my past thoughts was dominantly, and I'm going to change it to think favorably as much as I can, so that I can, change the tide in my favor. So I see it more like a progress report rather than, it being the end all be all, if you will. But we have definitely attracted it in our lives for sure, at least in my opinion. Basically, I manifested my SP back in September, but after some time around October end, we had a huge fight and we ended up in no contact. It's been a month now and we got no contact. So let me go back to your initial question. I think you spoke about the resistance, right? If I'm not wrong. So in this kind of a case, like, if you're in no contact, I would say that's actually a good thing, because what it does for you is that it allows you to, persist in the ideal version again, like without any, contradictory information in the 3D. Because for folks like who have contact with the SP and who are trying to confirm the SP, like what the previous person said, when the SP is like saying or doing things that are unfavorable and you try to focus on the ideal version, I feel like that is much more challenging, and compared to like when you are in no contact and you're trying to manifest the ideal version. So the no contact, I would say, is definitely in your favor, contradictory to what many may actually think. And a month is not a long time. Like as much as it may seem like in a long time, it's just 30 days. Like in the face of, like, if you really take a step back and look at, the timeline of things, I would say it's not a long time. So don't let it get to you. Don't let the time factor get to you here. Like, if you really just persist in the assumption that, you already have all that you desire, so what if it takes a month or two, right? It won't matter in the long run. So don't really focus on the time. Don't put pressure on yourself with the time. Like, what I would do is, trying to, like, put all my energy into persisting in the assumption that it is already done. And of course, you work on your self-concept in the meantime, and go out there and, definitely live your life. Like, don't get so hung up on this that you're doing, routines 24/7 as well. Like, go out there and live your life, because what that does is that it, takes, it adds to your detachment, if you will. So it takes the emphasis away from your, current desires and your need to really, really have it, because that kind of energy is not that, ideal as well. So going out there, living your life, and really persisting in the end that it's already done, those are things that would help you. And definitely don't get hung up on the time. Can you manifest in steps if it's hard to believe the ultimate goal? Definitely, you can. The only thing, like I always tell my clients, is this: like, the only thing is, when you do that, like, you have to have the self-discipline to move yourself from milestone to milestone. So what I mean is, let's say, like, you're manifesting an SP, and your milestone from, like, no contact is, like, maybe getting a text message. You have to have the self-discipline in order to go from, like, okay, like, message to maybe a phone call or, like, a relationship. You have to have that self-discipline to bring yourself there, rather than being sucked into the 3D again. Because what happens is that, like, let's say when someone is manifesting a marriage, for example, and they get back into a relationship with their person, they immediately go back into their old thoughts and, patterns, if you will. And that is not ideal, I would say. Right? Like, what I would do is really, persist in the assumption that we are already a married couple still, regardless of whatever that's happening in the 3D. So it's really about maintaining that self-discipline for you to see the end goal, and really, like, taking your mind from the end goal to end goal, like from goal to goal, if you will, from milestone to milestone, and not getting caught up in the 3D after, like, one milestone happens. Because manifesting is a way of life. It's not like once you do this, it's like it's over, right? Like, hopefully by the time you go through a few milestones, like, the thought process is already ingrained in your mind to the point where you are thinking naturally that way, without the aid of affirmations, for example. That's the hope with it. But ideally speaking, like, when you're going in steps, don't forget the end goal. Ensure that your thoughts are still favorable, and definitely watch your thoughts. Like, ensure that it doesn't, like, slip into the old story. And don't react to the 3D. If you see something unfavorable, don't freak out. Keep your focus on the end milestone, whatever it is at that moment you're manifesting. So that's the main thing there. Some tarot reader told me that when my career will be good, then my SP came with proposal only, like, things will be better only then. I'm trying not to think about it, but I'm not able to do that. Let me read that again. Okay, so essentially, I guess what the tarot reader said was, your career has to be good before the arrival of your SP. Then your SP came with your proposal only, like, things will get better then. I'm not trying to think about it, but I'm not able. I think, like, what I would do in this situation is really not to put an emphasis on other people's words. At the end of the day, you are the operant power, right? It's your reality and your rules, right? Unless, of course, you give that power to someone else, in this case, a tarot reader, for example. So what I would do is to, consciously reject that idea and tell yourself that there's no prerequisites for my desire unless I make it so, right? Like, Neville always talks about this in the form of backgrounds, right? Like, how he always used to get invited into clubs without any formal backgrounds or whatsoever. He wasn't, coming from a, wealthy family or an influential family, but, like, his family always saw themselves as such, and they became an influential one. But prior to that, they were literally nobodies. They were just ordinary people. So the idea is that, you don't give yourself any prerequisites for you to receive your desires, right? Even in the previous examples of the other person, where she was talking about the entrance exam and the college and whatnot, that is a prerequisite that you are putting on yourself based on whatever you heard in the 3D. But if you really want to be something, you can be that person, right? Like, for example, one thing that they always used to tell me personally was, you have to do well in science to be an astronaut. But we now know, like, if you have, like, enough, if you really really want to, you can, go in the form of a space tourist, for example, and technically still be an astronaut. Like, that's about to happen really soon. So the thing is, like, those are prerequisites that society kind of puts on you, and unless you accept it, those won't be true, right? So it's all about removing those prerequisites, and of course giving your word the power rather than anyone else's words, if you will. So I would definitely focus on, for like, not if it's unfavorable, especially not like putting an emphasis on other people's words and not letting it get to you. And this ultimately boils down to self-concept. So when it comes to this, like, what I would do is, really, like, ask yourself, like, okay, why am I, like, prone to believing others' words compared to my own? Or, why am I, like, letting their words get to me, right? Like, what is it about that, like, that I'm, letting it get to me? Why am I doing that to myself? And why am I not believing my own words of reassurance? And I think, like, that would kind of help you to shed some light on where your self-concept is, because if your self-concept is really good, you wouldn't let anyone's words really, like, kind of mess with your mind. You may get, like, swayed just a little bit in that moment, but the idea is that if you have a good self-concept, you will recover very quickly and you wouldn't let this bother you this much. So definitely work on your self-concept there. OMG, I have so much questions to ask. Do you have any video call sessions? Yeah, so if you want, coaching, definitely, like, DM me for pricing options and whatnot, and we can fix something. Or if you are looking for something other than that, like, I do have a newly launched Facebook group as well. I've already done 2 lives, and we have about 1 more to go, and I'll be doing another exclusive video on the live as well. And one thing about the Facebook group, the paid Facebook group, is you guys can ask me unlimited amounts of questions, and I will be answering to you within 48 hours. So if you guys need any information on that, DM me, and I'll share with you guys the pricing details and whatnot. How can you revise efficiently the old version of SP? Efficiently. Okay, so if you really want to do it efficiently, essentially what you do is you don't entertain the old version as much as possible, right? So I would say, if you really want to be efficient about this, like, going no contact would be ideal. Again, because you use that word efficiently there. The other thing is, like, disregarding the old story completely, like seeing the new and the old as, like, 2 separate entities. So you don't associate your SP with, like, all the unfavorable things in the past. And a part of, like, one way you can do it is taking accountability. Okay, it was my thoughts that created this version of, my SP, that whatever that I'm experiencing right now. But, like, what I'm going to do right from now is essentially focusing on the ideal version as much as possible. And I'm going to, persist in that. And I'm going to, like, persist in the ideal version where they are, repeating everything that I want them to. And really just, like, entertaining only that version. And one way to do that would be to not discuss the old version in any way to anyone, especially your friends who might be telling you otherwise. To not go after SP, which is something that I often see with my own clients. So those are the things that I would do there. Hi Gautam, it is advised to manifest things here and there to build faith in manifestation. But how if I'm not able to manifest anything at all recently? How should I bring my faith back? Okay, so what I would do is that, like, this is a really good question, because this is something that a lot of people actually go through. And what I would do is, go very small then. If your small is not small enough, like, go smaller. Like, for example, if a cup of coffee is hard for you to manifest, go for a penny, right? Look for a sign, right? Like, look for, like, a certain word, put it out there. Like, maybe I want to, see the word trust within the next 10 minutes or by the end of the day, for example, and slowly build it up. If the small is not small enough, go smaller and build your momentum through that. Another way to do it is to read the success stories, right? Like, The Secret has a website for that, dedicated just for success stories. So you can actually like search it up, like you can just put like secret success stories, and I think the website should pop up. And essentially what you can do is like go and read all those stories, like to kind of develop your faith in it as well. So that's one way to go about it. And the other thing I would do is seeing like your past situations where you thought something was impossible for you to achieve, but you still managed to manifest it or still managed to get it nonetheless. You may not have seen it from a manifesting lens prior to this, so maybe revisiting those like past events can shed some light and increase your faith as a result. So that's something that I would do, is revisiting my past, looking at events where I felt like completely lucky to receive something, and take a look at what was like my thought process back then, and like thinking about it from that perspective will really help. So yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, exactly. From what we have to detach, result, outcome, or what? The need to have it now, the need to experiencing things like right now, that's one thing to detach from. The detaching from the need to knowing how or when it will happen, and those types of things, I would say, like those are the main two things that ideally one would detach themselves from. And it's all about really focusing on the present moment, and it's all about maximizing your life and prioritizing your peace and happiness. Because you have to ask yourself, like, if my manifestations isn't bringing my peace and happiness to the surface, then what am I doing? If the process of manifesting like brings out a lot of like fear, worry, and doubt, then that is not the ideal way to go. So like one way to really detach is like from the outcome or just the idea of like manifesting itself, is really to prioritize peace and happiness. So those are the things that I would do. And like again, to answer your question, it's more about the needing to know when and how, detaching from unfavorable feelings, and the detaching from the idea of needing to have it right now, if you will. So those are the things that I have to detach from. If I have to start self-concept, what else should we do? Again, like I said, like I mentioned this earlier as well, but essentially like seeing the gap from where you are right now to your ideal self and bridging the gap accordingly. Making sure that your inner dialogue is favorable, and coming up with a routine, or like just self concept like affirmations, basically, like where like you are rewriting your old programming. Because if you say, like, let's say you suck at math, for example, you should just say like I'm gifted at math, right? See yourself excelling in that. And your self concept varies for different areas of your life. So for finance it may be one way, for SP it may be another. So what I would say is that pick out the top 3 areas of your self concept, like whichever areas that you want to improve in, and just like focus on that. Like that would be the ideal way to go about it. At the beginning of the year, I manifested that I'm gonna move to my SP, have a new job, and being happy in the new city. Everything happened. I work and live here now, but without him. He even blocked me. Okay, so you had 2 out of like 3 manifestations, essentially, is what you're saying right now. And don't let that get to you, right? Like, so you keep persisting. Like, if you don't have something by a certain time period, like, don't get hung up on it. Like I said, like this is actually like very relevant to the previous question with regards to the self-concept as well, in the sense that this essentially shows, like, with the other 2 areas, your self-concept was probably relatively good, but when it comes to SP, it may need a little bit more work. Like how you see him, how you see yourself, and how do you think he perceives you. Those types of things may be needs like a little bit of work here. You may need to shift your perspective to assume favorably in those things. And it's all about assuming with like a high level of conviction, right? Like, so you have to ask yourself, like, okay, did I believe the idea that I would be with my SP without any doubts, or did those doubts like overpower me during a majority of the time? And those types of questions would kind of shed light on your situation, if you will. You see, that's the thing. Like, so you said, so my biggest desire has not worked out. So the idea that you're putting it on a high level of importance right now kind of shows like where you position yourself, with regards to that desire. If you say like, this is something I really, really want, chances are like you're putting it on a pedestal, and you're kind of obsessing over it, and you're putting a lot of like, limiting beliefs on it maybe as well, because you're thinking like, okay, I really really need this, but I'm here right now, how am I going to get there? For example, this is your biggest desire. You can say all my desires are equal, for example. What's making this the biggest, right? Whereas if you say like all my desires are equal, it comes into level compared to like all the other desires. So if I were you, I would say that I manifest all my desires, with ease, for example. I would make that a general rule of thumb. And I would certainly stop putting anything on the pedestal. And so that way I make it easier for myself. Because right now when you say this is your biggest desire, you're essentially putting it on a pedestal, and you're saying that this is going to be much harder probably compared to the other things that I manifested. And sure, that's what the 3D may have reflected to you thus far, but essentially as conscious manifestors, we are supposed to change the old patterns. So this is something for you to recognize and change accordingly. How to stop negative self-talk? Literally do the opposite, right? Like, essentially if you're saying like, okay, you know what, I suck at XYZ, tell yourself, no, you don't, right? Like, you excel at all these things, and like essentially looking at your achievements, encouraging yourself. Be the adult that your inner child needs, right? Like when you are a child, right? Like you would have wanted like folks to embrace you in a loving way, tell you things and whatnot. The idea is that you want to be the adult that you once needed as in your childhood. And so like talk to yourself like that adult who's like able to nourish and encourage a child. Talk to yourself in that loving way. Oftentimes we do it for other people but not to ourselves. So the idea is to talk to yourself in that way, encourage yourself, right? And this is something that could be potentially be very emotional as well. So definitely take some time to get some me time, and really like just sit down and close your eyes and just start talking to yourself and let the emotions all come out. And that would be a way to really kind of like change the momentum in your favor, I would say, with regards to negative self-talk there. So I hope that helps. You're welcome. Yeah. Okay, I don't think we have any other requests in my private, so I'm trying to scroll down and answer that. There seems to be quite a lot actually. I'm feeling way more calibrated for having come to listen to all these beautiful reminders. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah. I wanted to manifest weight loss, but lately I heard a lot of people saying chubby is cute, and mind has created a lot of evidence, and now it's difficult to go back to what I want. Again, like you can argue that cute can be in many different ways, right? Like yes, chubby can be cute, and you can see a lot of evidence for that. But is that what you want? Again, it's being laser focused on your goal, as I spoke about in the beginning as well. You want to really be focused on what you actually want, and really be laser focused on that, regardless of what people say. Trends change, right? Like some days, being skinny is a trend. Some days being chubby is a trend and whatnot. But what do you want? That's the main thing. And it's very important to, like have, clarity in that and be laser focused on that. I always tell this to my clients, like whatever you do it with clarity, right? Because the more you don't have clarity, the longer this whole thing is going to drag with regards to your desires. So in this case, clarity is the most important thing. I'm trying to manifest clear skin and I feel good about me. But when others speak bad of my appearance, I feel emotional and sad. How to stop thinking about others' opinion on me? It's, again, this boils down to self-concept essentially, is when others talk bad about it, like you completely dismiss it essentially. And you do so by valuing your opinion more than that of others, right? Like even in this live right now, like I have a couple guys, like some of my guy friends, like trolling me even as we speak right now. But it's one of those things where you really have to be laser focused, and you really have to focus on why you are there and what you're doing, right? So in this case, it's about valuing your own opinion over that of others and really persisting in that compared to like whatever others may say, right? And it's okay to feel emotional and sad, but it is very important to remind yourself that at the end of the day, it's all about you, right? It's about your opinion, and their opinions don't matter unless you make it so. So, completely, remove it from your system, right? And you can always set the intention. You only hear, loving, favorable things from everyone around you, right? That's a great intention to set out there as well. And also you have to recognize it as, okay, maybe they're just reflecting a part of what I am saying as well. So if you really look at your inner talks, chances are you may find very similar dialogue as to what they are saying. So I would also encourage you to go there and like look at your inner dialogue and like change it accordingly as well. So that should really help you. Okay, let me just get a sip of water because, yeah. Can we manifest someone's health to get better? It's a genetic disorder. Definitely you can. Again, like if you look at the content that I've been kind of sharing on my stories recently, and it's really, really fascinating, is, the more we kind of look into the metaphysics of all these things, right? Like what is manifesting on a fundamental level, the more we realize at the core, on like a even like smaller than an atomic level, it's all energy, right? And if you really look at it from that perspective, right, like your DNA is much bigger than like an atom, right? So you can change it. Like it's not like nothing is set in stone. So it is shown and it is almost proven in science at this point that your perception affects whatever that you see right now. So if you see something as incurable, it becomes incurable. In this case, the genetic disorder. But if you see something as curable, it does become that. And in order for this, like someone's health to get better, simply move them into the state of being healthy. In your mind, see them as healthy. Have a conversation with them where they are telling you all those things like, hey, I'm really, really healthy right now, and I never felt better, and things like that. If they are bedridden, for example, see them, jogging, and basking in the sunlight, for example. Really like see them, smiling, and, them having the twinkle in the eye, and really like hold that thought whenever you see them. And they have to confirm. Why? Because in your reality, you are the only one with free will. So they have to confirm. Okay, so we have a private question. How do you personally manifest? Like if you're manifesting smaller feet, how would you personally go about it? Or like what would your routine be? Okay, if I'm manifesting smaller feet, I would probably literally just visualize my feet getting smaller. That's what I would probably do. And I would like, one thing that I might do, and this is one neat way to go about it, I guess, is definitely seeing my shoes becoming looser. Like I might visualize myself like trying to wear a shoe and see that the shoe is too wobbly for me because it's too big, like the current shoes that I'm wearing. So that's something that I might do. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Thank you for the live session. You're welcome. Yeah. Hi Shruti. Yeah, how are you? I'm sorry, I didn't know like when folks wrote this because like I'm scrolling all the way. So yeah, this live will be saved as well for sure. It'll be on my YouTube like maybe an hour or two later, depending on the upload times of YouTube and whatnot. So yeah, thank you. Was a little distracted a little bit. This session brings me back. You're welcome. Yeah. How do you manage disappointments amidst personal manifestations and better establish clarity to avoid future mishaps? So how do I manage disappointment? So whenever something like happens that I might potentially be disappointed, what I might do is essentially remind myself that it is not the end. If it's simply not what I want, it's not the end. So what am I doing sulking? Because that takes me out of that state, right? So like essentially like what I will do is like tell myself to like get back into that state as quickly as I can, right? Grieve if you have to, cry it out if you have to, because we don't want any unfavorable emotions in our system. So do whatever you have to, but quickly get back on the saddle and keep going as much as possible, right? So that's what I would do, like, because that's the most efficient way to bring whatever I want into my reality, right? So I would definitely allow myself to grieve if it's really, really disappointing, if need be, but like as soon as I'm done with that, like I'm getting back and assuming the best as much as possible, because my dominant thoughts is what manifests. So I'm going to persist in that assumption until it comes true. So that's that part, right? And to better establish clarity to avoid future mishaps. So I might do like, like a debrief, right? Okay, how did this happen? Like I might think about it, but like what I normally tend to do is, I would see it as, okay, maybe this could be the very bridge of incidents that has to happen for my desires to happen. So it's really not about avoiding unfavorable situations for me, because if it is what's going to lead me to my desires, then I really don't care. So I would say, like, I would try to keep my mental diet that much more favorable. I would definitely look at like what kind of shows I've been watching maybe a week or two prior, so that might shed some clue on like, okay, what's been manifesting. So for this reason personally, and I feel like I need to make a video about this down the line, is I don't binge watch things, if that makes sense. I don't look into like watch like 5-6 episodes of a series at any given time, because that really affects your thoughts. So I would definitely look into the content I'm watching, and if it's definitely unfavorable, or if it's violent inducing, or if it's something that induces like something that like pushes a belief that things are always unfavorable or life is kind of hard and things like that, as entertaining as it may be, I will immediately put a pause on it if something really big happens. So that's what I might do here. Yeah. Okay, that's another question. Do you live in India? No. I live in Singapore. I also manifested that you would answer my question. So, okay, yeah. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions, so I'll just give you guys a few more minutes. I think I really like went through all the questions really quickly. So if something was unclear, feel free to clarify it, and I'll be more than happy to answer it. Because this was again like a really spontaneous kind of live session. So I'm definitely going to save this live. But if you guys have any questions right now, go ahead and yeah. I'm just gonna scroll up and see if there's any other questions that I left unanswered or something. But if there's any, just let me know, and just like either put it in the request tab of the questions, but or you can just like retype your questions. Is one-on-one coaching available? Yes, it is. So you can just DM me for more information, and I'll get back to you. Correlation between quantum physics and law of attraction. So essentially, like briefly, if you really think about it, like if you really want to draw parallels between law of attraction or law of assumption and quantum physics, again, it comes back to the idea that everything's energy on a fundamental level, and whatever you perceive becomes your ultimate truth. So that's what quantum physics seems to suggest, and also the idea of thought transmissions. So we have often, talked about the particle where like, if like two particles are entangled and then one goes like a million light years away, no matter how far they are, like, they still like, if one particle spins one way, the other spins the opposite direction every single time. And that's been proven multiple times at this point. So essentially what it alludes to is like, thought transmissions being real and everything being connected on a fundamental level in one way or another. So there's that aspect to it. So those are ways that quantum physics and law of attraction kind of comes into play. Like they seem to suggest the same thing, and as we go closer and closer to this, that's what we are realizing, is that thoughts do create, the observer does create his reality, is what it alludes to essentially. Facebook groups price, DM me for more information. So I normally just keep it private. So if you guys need any information, just DM me and I'll get back to you with the price list and whatnot. Yeah. In the starting of my relation, my SP was so sweet. So I can manifest that version of him again for him to be like that always. Certainly you can, because what happens when you start is you don't have a lot of limiting beliefs. You feel good about yourself generally, which is why you may have even attracted them in the first place. And then as time goes by, essentially what tends to happen is, you may develop limiting beliefs based on, fears that could stem from as far back as childhood, for example. And when that happens, like you tend to develop fears, or what if this person leaves me, or what if this person sees other folks like attractive or things like that, right? And then that kind of develops your fear, and as time goes by, the rift kind of just uh, goes wider and wider, if you will. So that's what you ideally kind of look into. Yeah. So I'm gonna wrap this up in like about 5 minutes, and so if you guys have any questions right now, you can just like let me know, because I've already done, I think, about an hour, or not sure how much time has passed at this point. But this live will be uploaded onto YouTube in a while, actually. So if you guys have any questions, you guys can put it down in the comments there as well. And the coaching for 1 week giveaway is still going. So when we reach 1,000 subscribers, if you are following my page here and if you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, you will get 1 week of DM coaching for free. Like, one lucky winner will be picked, and I'll be announcing that. So we are very close to that giveaway right now, because we have about 921 subs as of today. So that way, like, this is, I think, 79 more before we reach the 1K. So I'm giving away that really, really soon. So if you want to enter the giveaway, definitely subscribe. Neville said every desire has its own divine time. Is it true? So the way he said it is, based on the law of gestation. So again, this is one of those things that's kind of contested in the community, if I'm being honest. So some people tend to reject it because, again, they come from the idea that if I'm the creator of my reality, then I can reject the idea of divine timing. Then whereas Neville kind of alludes to the idea that, like, there's this thing called the law of gestation, because where like certain things have to take a certain time. Nature has its own way of doing things, right? Like a baby has to take 12 months and things like that. So the way I personally see it is, yes, there might be a natural order to things, but like you might find yourself in a reality where those things might already have been done. Like, let's say if a couple wants to have a kid and, a lady is not like physically pregnant or whatsoever, they may find themselves in a situation where they have to take in a child, for example, right? So that's one way the bridge of incidents can unfold. So this is why I say, like, the higher self knows ways and means which we know not of. And so, it can unfold that way. I have seen people when they wanted a kid, they weren't even in a relationship, but in a year's time, they found themselves in a relationship, they got pregnant and they had a kid. And they look back like, oh my God, I wanted a kid and I was actually single. So the bridge of incidents can actually unfold relatively quickly, but the actual manifestation, because of the natural order of things, can take, however long it necessarily has to, take for it to come true. So that happens too. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. I'm feeling so anxious about my future. I feel restless. I feel calm only when meditating. How to calm myself, and should I let go of all my anxieties or face it? So the way you calm yourself, like meditating definitely helps. I agree. It really depends on your desire. Like, maybe like ask yourself, like, what's preventing you from calming down on a day-to-day basis. Like, are you thinking about the future too much? Like, are you thinking about the how too much? Right? So at that point, then it becomes a question of like surrendering to the higher self. It really becomes a question of like having faith in the process, that if I can see it in my mind, it's already sorted, so therefore I don't really have to do anything. It's really about convincing yourself of that. And as for facing your anxieties, definitely, like, facing it definitely has benefits, in the sense that chances are you're probably going to stop that from arising by like facing it, right? So what does facing look like? Sitting down, maybe writing it all on a piece of paper, clearly jotting down what your fears are, and telling yourself why those fears won't come true, or why it is highly unlikely for it to happen. So that's one way of facing your anxieties, and that's something that I do from time to time, and something that I kind of walk through some of my clients through as well. The worst case scenarios, if you will, and why it is highly unlikely to happen. And when you do that, you are essentially calming yourself, and you're essentially like being very dismissive of the worst case scenario, therefore allowing you to envision the best case scenarios with ease. So that could really help you, I would say. You guys are welcome. Yeah. So I'm going to wrap this up. So guys, thank you so much for watching and participating in the live. I really enjoyed all of your questions and whatnot. I'm pretty sure I answered all the questions. So if I have not answered any of your questions, leave it in the comments of my YouTube when I post this live, and I'm going to be posting it in a couple hours. And yeah, so guys, thank you so much for watching. So if you guys need any information on my coaching, again, DM me, and I will send you guys the updated list of my pricings and plans and whatnot. And also, yeah, don't forget, we are giving away that 1 week coaching DM. So all you have to do is, again, subscribe to the channel, and also follow us here on Instagram, and you're automatically entered into the giveaway. I'll be picking out a winner really soon when we reach 1,000 subscribers. So guys, thank you for watching. Stay safe and happy manifesting. Peace.